Welcome, world, to Queering Science, Theology, Philosophy, and Spirituality. That is QSTPS. And we are here giving you science, giving you theology, giving you philosophy, and spirituality with an LGBTQ perspective. And today we're going to have a short sermon, and it's a modern sermon. I've sermon, and it's a modern sermon. Have you noticed something about sermons? They are everything in the world um, is what do you call it? Is evolves, be it artificial systems, be it natural systems. Evolution is part of life, and so is revolution. So life is part of life, and so is revolution. So life is a process. Time is a process, and processes things change in those processes. I can philosophize on time and life all day, and so the sermons of yesterday do not sound like the sermons of today, and the speeches of yesterday do not sound like the speeches of today, and the books of yesterday do not in any way um, resemble the books of today. Reason being, even the language we use evolved. I know I like using the King James Version of the Bible, but realistically speaking, that English is no longer being used. The King James English. Thou, I'm not even telling you, I'm not talking to you thou. Imagine if I used all the English I've just spoken right now and spoke it in King James English. How that would be. I mean, very many people just be switched off and they wouldn't want to listen. So it's weird that everything evolves. And I had a friend, an atheist friend. He's still my friend, and I like what he used to say. That times change and we change with them, and that's the life. So the first pen the first pen to be created does not look like the pen of today. It's a different. Why? It's because humans always modify things. We always make things better or worse. So, like when you look at the sermons that are said to have been given by Jesus in in the gospel and the beatitudes. They were very short. I mean, they were so thematic, like blessed be the peacemakers, blessed be the pure in heart, all of these things. And then he ended. Then he switches, he goes to another topic. Then he switches again, he goes to another topic. He was always digressing. But when you read the sermons in the Old Testament, those are by the prophets. They were they were more lengthy, and you could tell there's a difference. So that is what and now today what I want to do, I want to use, I'm calling it a sermon, but it's just a speech, and it's not, so it's a very relaxed sermon. And it's not necessarily a sermon, it's very philosophical and very engaging, thoughtful, in the thoughtful sense, not in the speech sense whereby you can ask questions. And it came from the verse or a statement made by our friend George Soros. Friend, meaning sharing, we share the same thoughts in many things, not everything, but some things. And he said something about imperfection, and he said it long time ago, but today is when I decided to think about it. Especially, I was planning to do this during the time of Brett Kavanaugh, and I also said I was going to do this in my other channel, Rex Arthur. And this is because Brett Kavanaugh was a symbol of human imperfection and how deep imperfection can bring us down. And And that's why it made me really think about the world. I think the world, we ideally want a perfect world, but the reality is we are imperfect, especially human beings. But it will also bring us the question, could it be that even nature is imperfect? Yeah, maybe some animals, they shouldn't look. I mean, there are animals people say are very ugly. So, if people rely on the creation theory, um, are you saying that God really doesn't have taste because he made a chameleon have so many big eyes? And the weird thing is, the ugliness of the animal actually helps it do what it needs to do. So the chameleon needs big eyes because it has to look for the it needs to know where the enemy is, or not the enemy, its next food. So the advantage of the big eye is to look at all 360 degrees. Its eye is so wide like this, and he gets his meal very easily, and then camouflage, so he wins. And that's the beauty of nature. You should study the biodiversity, because there you learn a lot about strategy. You learn everything about life. So instead of using a verse, what I'm trying to say, this modern sermon, we're not going to use a verse. A verse is meaning a text from a religious book. We're going to use a quote. So, what am I trying to encourage theologians out there and pastors out there? That we don't have to stick to the old traditional way of preaching. Sometimes you can just preach using a quote and you're done. I mean, that's what happens with presidents and other public speakers. They don't really speak from scriptures, religious scriptures, but they're speaking truth. And the scriptures are called truth. So basically, we are having diversity of truth. That's why the world is having a lot of issues, and we'll always have issues like this, because we have different definitions of truth. Some people, the truth of the world is God, Yahweh, created heaven and earth. Others believe it is Allah. Others believe it was the Greek gods. So who is right, And none of those gods have come to tell us that this one is right. You see? So everyone, so what do you do? Pick what you want and go with it, and stick with it, and enjoy it. And then, but don't attack somebody who has a different truth from yours. I mean, even if it's not, I know it's not right to call it truth. Don't don't attack somebody for what they feel is truth, especially spiritual sense. There's different types of truth, and the highest truth is scientific truth, because it can be confirmed by anybody. But George Soros also said, because humans are imperfect, he also supposes that scientific truth can be falsified. What he meant by that is that even in science, what is called truth sometimes can be, if it can be falsified, then it cannot be really a perfect, it's not a perfect truth. And the reason of falsification comes from errors. And that's why I want to do this thing. It was the deepest, one of the deepest things I learned about life. And when I heard him say this, I kind of relaxed about life, because basically he said, we're going to read the quote as if we're reading a verse. We're not going to read from John 3:16, Matthew 5:6, or whatever. We're just reading his quote. So let's go to the sermon. And I'm reading from the book of George Soros, chapter 7, verse 28. And it says, once we realize that imperfect is the human condition, there is no shame in doing wrong, only in failing to correct our mistakes. I'll read again. Now just imagine you're in a church and and like let's try the black American style. Once we realize what they say, realize and anyway, let's get back to business. Once we realize that imperfect is the human condition, the human condition, emphasis. There is no shame in doing wrong, only in failing to correct our mistakes. So this is what George Soros said. And in a nutshell, if you listen to everything he said, there is a video that backs up what he said, World Economic Forum. And he said that the human systems have error. Everything human has an error. And and this is because the human condition is imperfect. So what does this mean? Everything humans make, systems, buildings, tools, products, everything we make as human beings will be imperfect. Reason being, we are imperfect. And it's an interesting thing to say. And if imperfect is a human condition, then perfect is not the human condition. There is no human that is perfect. Now, why did I bring up this discussion on this channel? It's because we are a theological, philosophical, scientific, and spiritual channel. And theologically, some people may want to fist fight George Soros because most religions, or some of them, they yearn for perfection. And perfection in the sense that when you do something, you'll become perfect. Even Jesus said it. He said, "Be perfect as my Father in heaven is perfect." And his definition of perfection is very interesting. He said, what makes God perfect is that he blesses both the good and the wicked people. He gives both of them rain. He gives both of them sun. Now, if you take what Jesus' definition of perfection is, it means an imperfect person is a person who is selective. That is, he may only bless wicked people or he may only bless good people. Or he may only provide for wicked people or he will only provide for good people. But God, in Jesus' view, is perfect because he provides for both the wicked and the good. He gives both of them rain. He gives both of them sun. Now, if you place that statement of Jesus next to Solomon, Solomon will tell you, that's why I said, even if you're wise or foolish, we all die. You know, even if you're good or bad, we all die. That's why it's that assertion that made death penalty not a useful punishment, because if you kill somebody for killing another person, they will die. I mean, just give him life imprisonment, he's still going to die anyway. And even how he's dying is already painful. I mean, he's being imprisoned for life, for life. So he's not getting out of the prison. And that means he'll die there. So it's a very slow death. And yeah, that's why I also don't support death penalty, because it makes no sense that somebody killed somebody and then you kill them. I mean, will the point is why people don't find death penalty worthwhile is that you'd rather kill somebody to bring back that person to life, the one who was killed by them. But if you kill them and that person still doesn't come back to life, there is nothing you've done, because you're still sad that somebody has died. So it's a vengeful punishment, and that's why many people are not advocating for it. I advocate for life imprisonment, and it's a slow way of dying because the guy is still going to die anyway. Yes, he's still going to die. And besides, he's not even enjoying how he's dying. When you're given life imprisonment, it means you're in prison till death. And so you just feel like, oh my God, I'm going to stay here for all that time. And I won't do. And meanwhile, the people who are mourning for the loss of the victim who was killed, they will be at peace because the person is in prison. Yes, he's in prison for life. So they will be at peace that justice has been done and they have not killed him or her, and they go on with their life. And of course, they will be going through comfort, and then after that, they'll forget what happened, or it won't pain them as much as it did in the beginning. So that's better. That's my view. Of course, some people have different views. Like in China, they do the death penalty for drug addicts, I mean, drug peddlers, and corruption scandals. I don't know if it works. We are yet to see that, but even if it works, is it the best way to deal with people? No. And it's based on what I'm saying. If humans are imperfect, then we should make laws and rules that are based on understanding the imperfection of human beings. Now, the funny thing about this thing is that many systems of the world are built on the weaknesses of humanity. Like law is an industry that really capitalizes on this truth that imperfection is the human condition, because that means people will always make mistakes forever. Do you know sometimes what that's why English has a word accident. Sometimes you just do something by mistake, and that thing you do by mistake happens to be a law, an offense. And the day you commit that offense, the police was just right there. And the law is clear. You go in for that, or you pay a fine. So, and it was an accident. You didn't really want to do it. It just happened. And that's how it is. And what does the word accident mean? It means imperfection. Yes, imperfection. And so, um, yeah, it's a very so the this is a very philosophical, very hard video to do, I must say, because you really have to think out the human condition. That if it's an imperfection, as it is, it means that how are we going to deal with it now? Are we trying to perfect something that cannot be perfected? Like when we make laws, you know you make laws to make people perfect, but these people can never be perfect. Yes, they can never be perfect. They will make mistakes. So what does this mean? When we make laws, then we have to make laws that can deal with the imperfections, rather than laws that try and make you perfect. And then you have to have laws that understand the imperfection. That's the other thing. Not Don't make laws that think that human condition is perfect. You know. So, uh, so let's go back to George Soros saying, and now we'll do it the Black American way. Once we realize that imperfect is the human condition, we've got to realize something. We've got to realize the imperfection of the human uh, body, mind, and everything. So, many people do not realize this. Very many people. They don't take time to understand humanity, understand who is a human being. And this is what I'm saying. It's a battle in the theological world, because some religions believe that when you do something, you'll become perfect. And then, yet, after doing that, you commit an error. I mean, look at Jimmy Swaggart. He was a pastor, he was preaching. And next thing you know, he was found with a prostitute, in full view of the public, and they followed him up, and he had to cry on TV, and people, that whole crying was like, yes, we need to see you. You need to. Yes, so we're back, and we were just saying the fact about different theological views about perfection, and some people, they, um, some religions like Christianity and I don't know about Islam, but no, Islam is not that. It doesn't really look for perfection. Um, it is the Christianity is that really puts emphasis on that because of the salvation process. When you get saved, you are supposed to live the old ways. You used to be lustful, so you don't be lustful. You used to steal, you don't steal. So all of those things, that's what's in Christianity. So I think Christianity tries to build an ideal. It really loves the ideal, perfection. It's very Platonic, if you've read Plato, because Plato said, um, what is perfect? What we see perfect in the mind, we want to produce it in in the external world. What's perfect in the internal world, we want to make it external. So that's the Platonic thought that Paul, who really talked about salvation and perfection, used to write about. And it's a bit, but realistically speaking, humans make mistakes even after the so called salvation process. And so, what does that mean? Now, when you look at John in the Bible, he takes a different route. He's not like Paul. For John, he says, if you make a mistake, just confess and you'll be forgiven. So John is understanding, John's understanding is you will still make mistakes, even if Jesus died on the cross and you believe. And even another weird thing you need to understand for those who are very detailed scholars. I'm now a very detailed scholar. I read even the comma so I can understand the thing. If you notice something, it's only Paul who really stresses salvation by confession and the whole of life. But the rest, for some reason, they don't really even stress it like the way Paul stressed it. Like John. John was a very active person, and so was James. James, there is nowhere he even gets angry about people believing in God by saying that, yeah, I'm a Christian, and their works don't show it. For him, that was just the height of hypocrisy. But for Paul, he said, you know what? It's not even what you do that will make you saved. It's what you believe, your profession, what you say. If you say you believe in Jesus, you're saved. That's what Paul said. But for James, you've got to do A, B, C, D. Then we'll know you are saved. Then we'll know you're good. So there's that war, which we'll deal one time when we'll be discussing about the different theologies of the apostles, because they are different, you know, very different in some areas. So, like I've told you, for John, he stresses that if you make a mistake, you just say sorry and you go on with life. But for Paul, he creates an impression that you are old, used to be like this. So next time, now you've become new because you're saved, so you'll never make a mistake. So there's some Christian outfits out there that really create an impression of perfection, and when it's not true, sometimes you will make a mistake even if you're Christian or saved. Now, the reason why they believe they create that impression of perfection is that Jesus cannot, because Jesus died for your sins. That death is so powerful, it can change you and you'll never make a mistake. Yes, so there are some people who think they will not make a mistake because Jesus did it. Because if you make a mistake, then it means Jesus' death was in vain. And that's what Paul says. And this is why I also questioned Paul when he said that those who continue committing sin, even after getting saved, they are reprobate and they are thrown out. They are rejected by God. And I'm asking myself, that's strange. Because the thing is, um, if you are saved, you've confessed that you believe in Jesus, you're saved. That's what Paul said. So how is it that that person who continues making mistakes loses that salvation? It doesn't make sense, because it means that, number one, either the salvation is weak, that Jesus really didn't empower that person, or the person's confession to receive Jesus was also null and void, therefore canceling Paul's statement that you can actually be saved by confession. And then thirdly, either he's saying that we are only saved by our works and not by our confession. So it all of those, the saying that there's somebody reprobate, apostate, and all of these things. To me, I don't think it exists. It shouldn't exist in a theological setting whereby you get saved or you get to nirvana. In Christianity, nirvana, the Buddhist nirvana is salvation, because when you're saved, you're now seated in heavenly places. In Buddhism, it's nirvana. So when you get to the Christian nirvana, I mean, why be removed again because of mistakes? Yet Jesus died for your mistakes, and he's supposed to help you beat those mistakes. So it's a very, very weird vision Christians have, especially those who think of perfection as the goal. And I would advise Christians, maybe don't look at perfection in this dimension, in this world, because that one is out of the it can't happen. Of course, there are some people uh who have done what there are some people, like, the imperfection is a human condition, but there are some people who have few imperfections. And this is what happened to Brett Kavanaugh. For Brett Kavanaugh, it's that imperfection that happened many years ago almost cost him what he got. But there are other justices, the other justices in the Supreme Court. I mean, there is no scandal. So what does that mean? Some people have less imperfections and they are minor and they don't really affect their positions or getting a job in public office. But there are other people who have more imperfections. And as I said in my other video, when you are hiring people for public office, you'd rather hire people who have few imperfections, in the sense that they have managed to live they have managed to live a life with little imperfections, few errors, few mistakes. Because then that means the system will also have few errors and few mistakes. That's what it means. And that's how it is. But it's not that those people you've hired will not make mistakes. They will, because that's the human condition. It's who we are as humans. We will make mistakes. I mean, how many errors have you made today? Many. Yes, very many. And you see, that's why people, sometimes you just look at life and just go on. Just live life and let it come as it goes. Of course, you try your best, but you'll make errors. You'll make errors of judgment, error of thought, error of action. Very different types of errors, and that's what now uh, George Soros was saying about the systems. And George Soros was talking about it in the economic sense, that there are some policies governments make that are erroneous. Yes, they can. And the reason why they make them is because governments are controlled by humans human whose nature is a nature filled with error. So it's a given that not all government policies will be perfect. Not all laws will be perfect. They will have errors. It may be based on error of judgment. Look at the LGBT, anti-LGBT laws in the Bible. You see the mistake other people make, mostly Christians who take the Bible to be inerrant. They believe that Moses did not make an error or in those laws. And we now know the truth that he made an error. It was an error of judgment because these people didn't know. They thoroughly didn't know what happens to the human body. Even women were not allowed to go to the temple because they were menstruating. They didn't understand menstruation. So things that they didn't understand, they banned. It was the easiest laws. Ancient laws were mostly bans. We ban this one should not do this one should not do this person should not do this. Even castrated males. Now, let me ask you a question. Why did they ban castrated males to enter the temple in the Old Testament? Because they were men who were castrated from birth. They had a deformity in their testicles. So when they saw them, they didn't understand what was happening to these men, and they just put them aside because they were weird. So what it tells you is the weirdos of the society were always outcasts. Even women were weirdos because they used to wonder, what is this? That blood is just coming out every month. She's just releasing blood. And because humans at that time will fear, so they said, no, you're a weirdo. Don't come if you're menstruating. You see? So it's a very interesting. It was because most of these laws were made out of ignorance. Yes. Now we understand. And now people have even solved menstruation. Women wear pads, and castrated men can also work. They can do something. So it is just a very interesting a fact that laws were made in days of ignorance. You have to understand that. And that's why laws are changed. Like right now, Britain, that was the champion of anti-gay laws, had to do away with them. Reason? They were not based on science. They were based on religion. Religion, an ancient religion that had no science when it was making its laws. It had no science. Yes. If they had science, believe you me, they wouldn't have made that law. I mean, I always tell people, go to Israel and see what they've done. Israel decriminalized gay sex. The same country that gave the world a Bible that bans gay sex twice in both testaments, the Old and the New. If Israel really believed and trusted the Bible, they would not have decriminalized gay sex. If anything, they would arrest all the homosexuals in Israel. But they have not done that. Why? They have science. Science has shown them this thing is true. Do not oppress somebody who is naturally engaging with his partner. And that's why they're not even they didn't go to the books, and you'll find gay sex is legal in Israel. And have you seen Israel being destroyed by those people the guys who like having the Sodom argument, that because Sodom was rained fire, they rained fire in Sodom because gay sex was there? No, Israel would have been burnt by now. I mean, yes. Why is it not being banned? You see, it's not being banned because it's science, truth, and the truth is gays exist, transgenders exist, all of these people exist. So, so let's just conclude. I've shown you the imperfection, and in the ancient world, The more ancient the world was, in some areas, not every area, in some areas, the more errors they had. Like most of the errors was any law that was based on a scientific issue and they had no science. Those laws have very many errors. And that's what you need to understand. Now, there are some things in the ancient world that are better than today. One of them is the building. You know, the classical, look at Greek architecture, look at Roman architecture. All of those, why was it that when it came to buildings, they were okay? Can I tell you why? Science. They had the science. They understood it. They understood the science of how to make a building, how to carve stone. They knew. The science is to know. They knew. But the reason why they had bad laws, especially about sexuality and food and women and all of these, is because they had no science. They didn't understand hormones. They didn't understand DNA. Can you imagine? DNA was just discovered 1956. It's not even 100 years. 1956. So, what does that tell you? Everyone who was born before 1956 needs a real teaching on DNA because that thing changed science. It changed science. People didn't know that it is DNA that makes is part of you. Before 1956, everybody knew it was blood and Mendel's chart, you know, the one of inheritance. That's all they knew. And even the eugenics of Nazi Germany was not based on DNA. See, they didn't know. They were just guessing that they were using Mendel's science of genes, but they didn't know that the smallest component of the gene was the DNA, an acid. Can you imagine? You're just full of acid. You're just an acid. You're a chemical. And so when that science came, it changed everything. And I always tell people whenever a new scientific discovery is made or law, review everything. Anybody who talked about that thing, please review it against that new discovery. So even all the books like now genetics, everything. Aristotle talked about mental disease. Read it against genetics and you'll be shocked. You'll find errors Aristotle made, because Aristotle also made errors and it was an accident. He didn't have the science. He was just guessing and looking at the human externally. There was no microscope. Yes, there was no microscope. So you can't blame him. That's why I'm saying, much as Moses made those laws, Moses was just a human. He just wanted to see order. He was used to being a king, a leader. So he just wanted order. But he didn't know. And that's what happens to some leaders. They make laws, they don't even know what is happening. You see? Like the Gambian president who used to attack homosexuals. He didn't know the science. Didn't know. But he was in a position of power. That's the dangerous part. And so he was making laws that are not based on science. And that's why we always tell the current presidents and leaders, you also, people need to have a prophetic role. And the prophetic role is tell your presidents to stick with science. See what's happening to Trump? He's just going berserk because he wants to please his voters for 2018 midterm elections. So he goes to attack transgenders. It is so funny. Actually, what Trump has done, the person he's hurting the most is Caitlyn Jenner. Because Caitlyn Jenner even went as far as saying that she will vote for Trump. And then Trump, instead of standing with Caitlyn, Imagine he has never invited her to the White House and stood with her and said, I stand with Caitlyn and I'm very happy she campaigned for me. Nothing like that. Instead, he's backstabbing, he's stabbing someone who managed to get some votes for him. So I don't know. We wait and see. It's going to be a very interesting midterm elections, and even there are many transgenders running. I hope Chelsea Manning is still running. Um, yeah, we want to see and see if she will win. So anyway, the fact is, you see, when you don't understand transgenders, go and ask the scientists, please, and ask them, I don't understand this thing. Please explain it to me in the simplest way. If you're a pastor and you don't understand transgenders, you don't understand gays, please go and seek medical advice. Now, seek academic advice. They will teach you. It's all there for you to learn. And once you learn, you will be happy. That's why Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And I've told you, just substitute it. I have a new way of reading the Bible. I do substitution, and I also do reverse substitution. So I say, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. So you shall know science, and science will make you free. What is freedom? Think of what is, and again, back to my reverse substitution or interpretation of things. Now, what's the opposite of freedom? Is slavery, it's bondage, it's limitation. If you're chained to your hands, you will not be able to stretch your hand to do something. There are very many things you will not do if your hands are chained. If your legs are chained, you can't move to certain places. You know, that is that is lack of freedom. But freedom is this. Look, I can do this. I can wave because I'm free. So that's what happens now when you know science. You can go this way. You can do this. You can have this outcome. You can plan this. You're free because you now know what is happening. You now know who this person is. Now, when you know a transgender, when you know a gay person, oh, you'll greet them. You say, hi, oh, how you doing? And you're very free with them. But when you don't know them, you will be like, I don't even want to talk to him. He may even infect me with transgenderism. And you run away. You see, that's why it's called homophobia and transphobia. It's fear. And when you're fearful, you're not free with that person. See? So to kill fear, no. And if you don't know and you can't understand, please go and see the one who already understands. So anyway, now let's I can divert from this. That's how modern sermons are these days. They are filled with digression. And but anyway, the fact is, as we finish up, uh, we are all imperfect, but some of us have more imperfections than others. Others have less imperfections than others. And so what that this means is that when we, and now let's end it with the what he said lastly, that there is no shame in being wrong, only in failing to correct our mistakes. So the only shame we have is if we don't correct our mistakes. So the fact is, first understand we are imperfect. Secondly, our job in life is to try and correct those mistakes, and then to make, it's not, of course we won't make the system better, because uh, actually this quote, it's, first of all, it's an imperfect quote because it's coming from an imperfect person. So you just panel beats in some places. What I mean, why I'm calling it imperfect, is that you'll correct your mistakes, but then the next day you'll make another mistake, and what will happen? You'll have to correct yourself again. So basically, George Soros is taking the thought of John. Just when you make a mistake, just correct it and do it again. And that's what I tell some people. Some people are not patient with other people who make mistakes forever. And they just think, and you have to understand people. People are different. Psychologically, they are different makeups. Even in school, not every child has the same academic potential. And that's why some teachers, have you noticed, very clever teachers are not very good to, it's not good to have a clever teacher teaching children, because they they will look down upon a slow learner or a child who is not doesn't have the academic potential they have. So they rush, and then I remember many teachers, and some of them would tell you, if you can't get it, go and get it later on. Let me deal with those who can get it now. And I was like, excuse me, you're a teacher, so your job is to make sure everybody gets that thing. And of course, that takes a lot of sacrifice. That's why the current education system is a bit complicated and confused, because the old one was, let a teacher spend time with one student. That was the old system. But today we are involved in mass education. So mass education has led to that too much generalization in educating children, and so the children who don't understand are left out, and then the children who understand are the ones who are kept, and these ones, meanwhile, they are psychologically being they're going through a lot of psychological illness, because they feel like, I can't get to this level of this child because this guy is beating me, and meanwhile the teacher focuses only on this bright one. you know like what is happening in America right now. There's this war that Harvard should only take people by merit and not consider racial differences. And I think this is how I would put it: take people both for merit and racial considerations. Reason being, what the black race went through in America, the Asian race did not go through. That is why Harvard has that racial condition. It's not that they are discrediting merit. There is still merit. I mean, you won't put somebody there who cannot survive Harvard. That's why you use the merit. You find the grades and then you see. But what you do is, the affirmative action is, there's something else you're looking at. You're looking at where this person comes from and the historic background, and this person deserves a chance because their parents did not have that chance. Harvard, it's only till 1965, if I'm not wrong, Brown versus Board of Education, that's when they started thinking about blacks to be part of the system. you know and it's very sad. It was like they just ignored black people for all that time. And so now, after that, now blacks came in, they started reading. That's why there are more white professors than black professors. It's a fact. I mean, just do the math. Blacks started being in the system 40 years. So, back to affirmative action. So affirmative action is there because of historical issues. So I was of the view, when I saw that policy, they should let the black people still go into Harvard based on racial considerations, but they should also have merit as one of the other considerations for joining Harvard. But they shouldn't remove the racial consideration. Reason being, history is still, history is the foundation of the future. Yes, that is the saddest truth. In Not sad really, it's just the truth. History is the foundation of the future, because what you are today is 50 more than 50% because of what happened yesterday. So if you want to change the future, you'll have to change today. If you want to change the future, you'll have to change today. And when you change today, today forms the foundation of tomorrow. That's the fact. So when you look at a country like America, those blacks were slaves. Their ancestors were slaves, and because of that, they missed a lot engaging in the system. I mean, tell me, name for me the one black American who wrote the Constitution of America. One, one, just one, and we will give you a clap. You see, of course, and I'm talking about black skin wise, because you may find some people had the same genetic makeup there, and that's another topic. We'll talk about it. So, what I'm trying to say is that because of that historical fact that there is no black man who wrote the Constitution of America, that missing, not participating in that in constructing the country, had an effect on the future. And we've seen it. Blacks were not voting. Blacks did not go to school with white people. Blacks were slaves. I mean, it would have been something else if the Constitution was written by white people and white people were slaves. Yes, because there were even white slaves in Europe. The Slavic people. That's where we get the word slave. It's because the Slavic people were slaves in Europe. They used to be chained, white slaves. And so, so, but in America, the white man was not a slave. He was one who organized everything, put the country, and did all of that. So that history has an effect on the future and the present. Look at today, if you look at why people attack everybody, or why they attack like now the white man, it's because of the history. Who organized the country? It was a white man. Name for me the woman, any woman who wrote the Constitution, the American Constitution. Any. Just one. You see, her name is not there. Not there, no black person, nothing, just white men. So that history formed the foundation. And that's why when people are when you'll find the enemies of these of their foundation are people who are not part of building the country. So that's how you solve this situation. And going back to George Soros, the whole point of the video, that tells you there's an imperfection. It was an imperfection on the part of the founders of America. So what do? They correct the system because have you noticed there is no constitution in the world that doesn't have an amendment? Yes, no constitution that doesn't have an amendment. Even Piers Morgan, I won't forget, he told Rick Warren that amend the Bible. Yes, and he was right. Amend it. If you find that you have gays who attend your church and the Bible says gays are not allowed, they are not people of God, amend the Bible and say, no, actually they are. This is a natural disposition. So he told Rick Warren, and Rick Warren could not say anything. He was. And Piers Morgan, I give him 100% for telling him that. So it's the same. Reason being, the laws of the past, because of our human condition of imperfection, some laws were erroneous. Some laws are imperfect. Some laws are bad. So when we find out they're bad, we correct them. So to even now, as I told you, the Constitution of America, it has amendments. Why? Because it was not perfect. They found out, oops, we forgot to do this. Had it been that the founders were perfect men, there would be no amendment to that Constitution. There are more than 10 amendments in the American Constitution. Can you imagine? A country that people see is very perfect. Very perfect country. The amendments. So that is life. We are always correcting our systems because we are arenas in nature. We make mistakes. We are imperfect, and that's how we are. And it doesn't mean we can't do things well. We can. I mean, people have built good houses, good phones, but your phone, your phone still gets spoiled. It still has an error. That's why, yeah, even sometimes you cook food today and you burn something. Yeah, that's our nature. So accept your nature, and when your nature comes to full being, don't collapse. Just come back and pick up from where you left off and say sorry and go on with life. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us to this interesting sermon on imperfection, the human condition.